Well, it's now time to incorporate everything that we learned so far, including the box model, into our blog page. So here goes. So this was where we left off our blog, and now we're going to make some more changes to it. First of all, I just want to make some changes to the headings. So let's go to the style sheet and change some properties here. So first of all, we want for the H1 elements to have a margin bottom of 20 pixels and the H2 elements to have a margin bottom of 10 pixels. I also want to make some changes here. So I want everything to have a margin 0 and a padding of 0 so that it overwrites the browser defaults. So padding 0. I don't want this either because I'll set the width later on when I create a div to contain all the elements inside the body. Okay, so right now we're gonna have some generalized settings, some generalized properties for the fonts and everything. So font size, will make it 18 pixels, the general font size, and we will make the font family, let's make it Calibri. And if this font is not found, if the system font is not found, then we'll use the Arial, okay? Because sometimes some browsers don't support some system fonts. So in that case, Arial is always there in all browsers, so this will be the backup. Now we're ready to make changes to our main HTML element. Let us introduce a heading. So we'll have a div for the heading or the header, okay? Div class equals header, and we're going to write here the simple life. That is going to be the blog header, the simple life. All this from here till here, this is going to be inside a block called the article, okay? Because this is where the main articles are going to be displayed. So let's create a div for that. Div class equals article, and let's indent all of this and close the div tag. All right, and now this is going to be the footer, okay? So we'll div class equals footer. Again, put all of this indented to the right, and there we go. And we want to put everything that's there inside another div. The header is not going to be part of the div. We're going to have it around this div class equals container, okay? All right, and let's put all of this to the right, this whole thing, and close the div. Okay, so we're done building our basic structure. We have a div for the header, one div for the whole contents of the blog page. Within the container, we have a div for the article and a div for the footer. We also need one more div, blog post, for the other blog post, like how I showed you. What I mean is this other posts part, we're gonna have another div for this, all right? So let's create that div now. So we want to create a div over here before footer and after articles, okay? So we're gonna call this div class equals, we're gonna call it other posts. This is going to be the container for all the other blog posts. And then inside this, let's have a heading, an H2 element. What was it called? It was called, I think, other posts, other blog posts. And within this other posts div, we need divs for each individual blog post over here. 1, 2, 3. Just like we had in our sample layout, remember? This one? So you have blog post 1, blog post 2, blog post 3. We're going to name it exactly that. So we're going to have one div, and it's going to be from the class blog post. And inside that, we will have an image. For the time being, let's just leave it blank. We'll fill it in later. And we'll have an alt. And we'll have a class. Actually, we don't need a class. Let's just leave it as it is. And we also have, can you see here? We also have a text over here. So we'll just make it a P, okay, a P element, the minimalist mindset. Okay, let's just write P, and inside let's write the first topic as the minimalist mindset. Now notice this is also a link. See, each of these is a link. We also want that. So we are going to put an anchor tag around this paragraph. For the time being, let's just put a hash symbol here for the URL. What the hash symbol does is it just, when you click on this link, it just takes you back to the same page, to the beginning of the same page. But of course, when you're going to be actually designing a website, this has to go to another blog page, right? Which has the text for the minimalist mindset, let's say. So that's it for this block. And we'll have 3 of these. So 1, 2, 3. There we go. And do we need to change anything here? This will be the same class because all of them need to be styled in exactly the same way. Just the text is going to change and the image source is going to change. Also the alt attribute value is going to change. Okay, so let's see what the other text was. 7 secrets to a happy life. Okay. 7 secrets to a happy life. And create your own success. Create your own success. And now it's time to fill in these image source URLs, okay? So I already downloaded some of these images and kept them inside my folder, in my project folder. So I'm going to be using these ones here. The first one was for the minimalism. What was it? The first one was, I think it was this, image 3, image 4 and image 5, okay? So let's do that. img3.jpg. This one is img4.jpg and this is img5.jpg. And you can just enter an alt over here, minimalism. The second one was, what was the image? Man in a desert. Man in a desert. And the last one was students with graduation hats. There we go. Let's just see what it looks like right now. So this is as it was before, and oh my god, see, why are these repeating? Oh, I put the same image name over here, image 4 and image 5. I put the same URL by mistake. Okay, so you have 3 different images here. Not exactly the way we want them to look, but we're going to change that soon. Let's start styling. First, we're going to style the header section. Okay, this has the class header. Let's put it right here after body. Header. And what do we want for the header? What styling do we want? We want a width of 1140 pixels because we want it to occupy the entire area of this place from here to here, but we don't want it to go too far. We just want it to go from here to here. Then we can put a margin of 20 pixels from the top, and if we put an auto margin on the left and right, then we can center the header within the body. Okay, so left and right will be auto, and we don't want any margins at the bottom at the moment. And let's just have a 10 pixel margin at the bottom, and in the left it's again going to be auto. We want a padding of 30 pixels, a font size of 40 pixels. And as I said before, the font family and the font size usually gets inherited from the body. But since we don't want the font size 18, we want it to be 40, we just change the font size. But we don't need to change the font family because it automatically gets inherited from the body. We then want the text within the header to be centered in the div. Okay, so we use text align center. And finally, let's give it a background image. So what background image are we going to give? I have one already downloaded here inside the project folder. We can use this one, BG image. So let's write that here, BG image JPG. So we're going to put bgimage.jpg, that's the URL. And now let's see how it looks. Just the header. Okay, this looks much better. As you can see, there's only a part of the background image that can be seen. You cannot see the whole background image. You remember what the background image originally looked like? This was how it was supposed to look, right? But only a part of it can be seen because its size is much bigger than the size of our header div. So to change that, what you can do is, if we want the whole background to fit within our container, we can use a property called background size. And we can set it to cover. What it then does is it fits the background to the container. And now, doesn't it look prettier? Okay. Now it's time to work on the article div. The article div is inside the container div, right? It's nested inside container. So let's first style the container. Container. We again want this to have a width of 1140 pixels, like the header. And like the header, we also want the same margin. So we have 20 pixels for the top, auto for the left and right, and 10 pixels for the bottom. You'll see it's already starting to take shape. Well, not yet. I think I made a mistake here somewhere. Let me just copy the spelling. Sometimes I make mistakes in spellings. And let me just copy this whole thing from here. Okay. Our page should already start looking different. See? The container got reduced in width to 140 pixels. And these haven't changed size yet because we haven't styled them yet. All right, next we're going to work on the article class. So we want the article to have a width of just 75% of the whole container. This means the width of article is going to be 75% the width of the container. It's going to be 75% of 1140 pixels. Let's take a look at what difference this has made. So you see, it's taking up 75% of this container. The header takes up the whole 100%, but the articles take up 75%. Why? Because we also want our blog posts to come over here, our other posts, right? We want that to occupy the other 25%. So we're done with article. Next, let's work on the paragraphs. These paragraphs look all right already, but we want to make them look even better. We want to align them to the justified alignment, okay, so that they take up this whole space over here, so that they space out in such a way that they take up the whole space from here to here, okay. And we also want some amount of margin between these two and between these two, right? Okay, let's do that. Actually, this doesn't matter because this is going to go up anyway, but we do want some margin between this and this, okay? Let's go back to the HTML document and give these paragraphs a class name, okay? So let's name this p class equals article text, and let's give the same class to the other paragraph as well. Now we can work on this class, okay? So it was called article text, and we want to align it to justify. We will also give it a margin bottom of 20 pixels. Let's reload and see. So it got nicely justified and it looks nice and neat. If you want to put some space on top as well, you can do that. So we can just say, we'll just remove bottom from here. We will just set all the margins. So the top will be 20 pixels, left and right will be 0. So we use this shorthand where the top and bottom is 20 pixels and left and right is 0. Let's take a look now. And that looks much better. Next, let's work on the other posts. So let's take one more look at this div here. So we have one div called other posts, and inside it we have an h2 element. We have another div called block post, which contains an image and a linked text. And we have 3 of these blog posts. So first, let's just style the other posts. Then we can style the blog post, and then we can style the individual elements wherever needed. Where do I put this? Let's put it after article image. Okay, so it's going to be called other posts. And let's first just give it a width of 25%. As I said, the articles part will have 75% of the width, and the other posts will have 25% of the width. There isn't any change yet because we haven't changed the size of these images here. So let us refer to the image which is under other posts, right? We don't want to change any other image. We only want the changes to apply to those images which are under this div. So a good way to do that is by writing the name of the div, other posts, and then putting a space followed by the image selector. Just general image selector. You don't need to provide the class name or ID name or anything like that. And now we can just set the width. We want it to be 80% of its parent. Its parent is other posts, which is 25% of the container. And we want the image to be 80% of this container. Let's look at what happens now. And it gets significantly smaller. In this case, I also want to set the height of these images because each of them seem to be of a different height. So let me just set a common height for all of them. Let me give it a height of 200 pixels. So all the images will have a height of 200 pixels. No, I don't like that. Maybe 300? This looks a little bit longer, but it's okay. You can just do some trial and error and find the best height and width ratio. Alright, we can also now start working on these headings or these titles for each of the blogs, okay? We didn't have any class for these titles, so let's put them right now. Let's put it here, class equals, let's name it other title, okay? Let's just name it other title. And we're going to give the same class to all of them. Now time to style it. Dot other title. We want a font size of 16 pixels. This is something completely up to your discretion, however you want it, however you would like to see the fonts and the font sizes and the image sizes. We don't want these underlines to appear and we want them to be capitalized, okay? We also want to change the color of this. We don't want this blue color. So let's make all these changes. So we'll make the color black or hash 000, that's black. To remove the hyperlink underline, you can just use a property called text decoration and you can set it to none. That's going to remove the underline from there. And you can then use text transform to convert the case to uppercase. Actually, instead of hash 000, why don't we use the same primary color that we had used? Oops, I put 2 hash. Okay. Let's see now. Much better. But we want some margin between all of these. Instead of setting a margin for each of these titles, what we can do is we can set a margin for the whole blog post div. Okay, so let's do that. We haven't yet styled the blog post, so let's do that now. Let's put it right after other posts. Okay, so blog posts, actually it was blog post, not posts. Okay, and let's give it a margin bottom of 50 pixels. Let's take a look now. Yeah, better. Now it's time to make the major change, and that is bringing all these blog posts up over here. And how do we do that? By setting the class article to an inline block. And same for other posts. Anything happened? No, it didn't. Why? Because you need to float this to the left. So let's do that right away. Float left. And there you go. But with this came another problem, and that is you now have your footer up over here as well, although you hadn't intended to do this. This is because whenever you float something to the left, the additional elements find some space. They usually try to take up that space on the right. They also try to float together. So what we want to do is remove the float as soon as the author information or the footer has been reached. So for that, we need something called a clear fix. So I'll show you how to do that after your blog posts get over, your other posts get over. Create a div of class clear fix. And this clear fix is mainly meant to clear all the floats. As soon as it reaches here, all the floats get cleared, and so the footer does not get floated along with the previous divs. So let's define the clear fix here, clear fix class. And this is something that you always use whenever you want to use clear fix. There are just 3 lines. You can just remember these and you don't really need to understand them that well. So content should be blank. Display should be set to table. And you have to use something called clear both. What this is going to do is it's going to help clear your floats so that the footer now doesn't get floated along with the other divs. Okay, so let's take a look at what happens now. So the footer went down. Perfect. We still don't have space over here, so what we can do now is we can just increase the padding for this so that there's some space over here. So let's go to article. So if you face difficulty in finding something when your code becomes too long, that's pretty natural. What you can do is you can just press Ctrl F and you'll get a search bar like this, from where you can just type your class name, click find, and you'll get it. We still haven't found it. There it is. Okay, so over here we are going to set a padding right. Padding right, let's have 30 pixels. And now this looks much better. Perfect. The last thing we need to do is to style this footer. So there's not much that we need to do over here. First thing we need to do is just bring this text over here so that it looks nice and attractive. So what do you do for that? We can just use the float. So notice that even if they're not divs, you can still float elements by using float left and right. Okay, so let's just set that now. We'll go down to the footer image. We'll set the float to left. There we go. But we still want to do a little more work. We want to create some space between this image and this text. And we also want to reduce the size of this text, the width of this text. So why don't we just use the footer class and then put a p selector there instead of defining a new class for the paragraph. You could do that, that wouldn't be wrong, but for the time being I just want to do this. So I'll give it a width of 60%. That's going to be 60% of the footer container. And I'll give it a margin left of 20 pixels. I also want to align the text to be justified. Text align, justify, to give it a nice neat look. I still don't see any space here. What's wrong? Oh, I didn't put a semicolon here, that's why. Nope, didn't work. Maybe it's because this is a paragraph element. It's not a block element. So let me just try converting this to a block element. For that, all I need to do is just put display inline block. And work like magic. So you can take a look at this now. It's starting to look amazing. We just have one more thing left, which we're going to cover in the next video. So see you there.